Far Out Space Nuts. I love that one, and
big fan.
Again, as a kid, I remember watching it as a little kid and just like buying into it completely. And for some reason, again, we're talking about like memories of stuff. And my recollection was that it was called the Astronauts. But then I was looking up, I couldn't like there is
TM that.
Well, there is like a newer
awesome.
there is like a newer thing called the Astronauts. But as a kid, I just remember it all. I always thought it was called the Astronauts. So I don't know if like that's just as a kid, Far Out Space Nuts, like that didn't mean anything. Like Far Out Space Nuts, it was a mid-period Sid and Marty Krofft show. 75. They'd already had some shows prior to that. It was Gilligan and Chuck McCann, and you can tell they were going for, like, the producers were going for a Gilligan and Skipper kind of energy, but instead of being stranded on an island, they're stranded on another planet, and they kind of bumbled their way there. And you were comparing it to MST3K. Yeah, they were these like just these workaday guys who were loading the meals for the actual astronaut crew, and like the setup. They do these elegant setups at the beginning of all of these shows, and like the credits, it's this elegant setup where they're loading up the dinners and they're loading up the food for the crew, and Gilligan or Junior, the Bob Denver character, he's sitting there reading a comic book, and so the other guy's saying dinner, and then he presses the button, dinner, and then he's like lunch. And he's like, I said lunch, not lunch. And
that's the shit. That's like manna from heaven.
Yeah.
Also, Bob Denver, like his haircut, having the last name Denver, at some point you magically receive John Denver's haircut.
He has like
John
a bowl.
Denver cut of this.
That was another thing, because as a kid, even then, I was kind of like, okay, like I can tell it's Gilligan, but like this must be later because Gilligan has gray hair.
I know, that was kind of
it's a bummer.
sad.
It's a bummer. And I was doing the like I did what we say like you should never do is like look up the ages of these people. Bob Denver.
Oh God!
In the making, like how old would you think Bob Denver is?
I thought he was like 48 or 50.
You're right. Yeah, like in his 50s, because it's like it's gray. It's great. Like maybe it's like alternating black and white hair.
And under those lights in that studio,
the budgets aren't huge. You know, the makeup budget, and then it's like this like real bad early video. Yeah, because like Puffin Stuff is kind of the classiest one because Puffin Stuff is on film, and then the rest are on this like real brash video. Like they all look like they have motion smoothing, but like so Bob Denver is 40. During the making of
I don't feel so bad now. Like
as a kid, probably like preschool or kindergarten, and thinking like, oh wow, Gilligan's an old man.
Yeah, I thought he was like in his 50s.
Yeah, a lot of times Sid and Marty Krofft, because again, low budget, so they try to get somebody who's like a big star, but like their moment has kind of passed, and so they get Bob Denver to sort of reprise Gilligan. The Lost Saucer, they get Jim Nabors, but then it's after Gomer Pyle, but he's still doing the Gomer Pyle voice.
100%.
And he's saying, oh.
I love that McCann guy.
Yeah, Chuck McCann.
So good. And then I was like looking up, I'm like, well, what is he?
He's famous.
Puppeteer and stuff. But then doing a little research, it said he did a lot of children's puppeteering and children's programming and stuff. And then it says close personal friend of Hugh Hefner, and he would spend a lot of time at the Playboy Mansion.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's like Don Adams was another Playboy Mansion guy. Probably they were in the same circle, probably like friends and stuff. And he's like Inspector Gadget and stuff. You look at it, and at first glance, it's Gilligan and the Skipper, and I guess they couldn't get Alan Hale, so they had Chuck McCann. But Chuck McCann, his performance alternates between two different things, I'll have to watch like all the episodes all the way through, but it seemed like in the first couple episodes, he's doing an Oliver Hardy. Like in his mind, it's Laurel and Hardy, and he's doing Oliver Hardy, and he's like, Junior, if you would please,
I love that.
He's doing that, but then it starts to like sometimes within the same episode, he'll be doing, Oliver Hardy, and then it'll turn into like. Hey, like The Thing or something, like, sort of like brash, like New York, like, hey, Junior, load up that thing. Like, so he's kind of good. So I don't know if like he was kind of feeling out the character, or maybe they were directing him like, like we don't want Oliver Hardy. We want somebody who's a little more.
And he keeps shoehorning Oliver Hardy. Like it's no matter what they tell him.
Because he did in cartoons, like he's been the voice of Oliver Hardy. I think even in the Scooby-Doo episode.
I was going to mention Scooby-Doo because a very Scooby-Doo like live action-ish when they're running from that creature and stuff. And like,
that's what these shows. I love it. All of these shows were supposed to like animated shows. But it's like it would be so much cheaper to just stick somebody in a kind of like Godzilla. Like we could do Ray Harryhausen style stop motion for this giant lizard, or we could just get a guy in a suit.
Like in all these shows, they're doing Scooby-Doo maneuvers. Like in what Wonder Bug, the characters are like all three back out of different rooms and then back into each other and go whoa.
And sometimes it's the same sound effects. A lot of times it's the same voices. Like it's people you hear in cartoons and stuff like Wonder Bug. I think it's Frank Welker, the voice of Scooby-Doo, is the voice of Wonder Bug. And it's interesting seeing the evolution of the Sid and Marty Krofft body of work. One of the high points is Land of the Lost. Like Land of the Lost I think is just phenomenal science fiction, beautiful sets, beautiful design. Like the writing I think is surprisingly good. It's kind of like serious science fiction. It's got all the hokiness and stuff, but it's got like serious science fiction, great stop motion animation and stuff. But as far out Space Nuts, it's kind of like it's got like really good sci-fi too, just like Land of the Lost. But then they also put in the sort of vaudevillian comedy of the two characters. So it's a really nice fusion of like kind of like the cartoonier kind of stuff of like these two guys bumbling. And when Chuck McCann gets hit in the face with a pie, like he gets hit in the face with the pie in the opening credits, and then I saw it in at least one episode.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
It's so
and they have it sped up and every time I see that intro, I always laugh because it's like so fast. Like that pie hits him so fast and hits him so beautifully, and he's doing like Oliver Hardy, like he's got the perfect that move.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, he's got a space helmet on. And
you gotta love the pie removal part.
But the science fiction's good. Like they go because they'll get in their spaceship and then they'll try to escape and then they'll like end up in some other section of this planet. And so like there's this like these bird creatures that they end up with, these alien birds. And then there's like, in these robots, the look of everything looks great. The opening credits, they flash to like all these different creatures that all look amazing. And then there's like one I didn't get a chance to check, but there's one shot where there's like this like white werewolf that kind of comes.
I saw that in the opening credits, and I was like, when is that gonna happen? Like,
and I feel like I thought
he like leans in like
because in Heat Vision and Jack, there's also a quick shot of like a werewolf. So I didn't check, but I was wondering, did Heat Vision and Jack just take that little like 2 seconds of film and stick it in there?
I forgot about the werewolf and Heat Vision Jack. That's such a great pool.
Yeah, like nice I wonder. We'll have to check.
Cool.
And then they have Honk, who's kind of like their little sidekick. Their
how did I fucking forget about Honk? Dude, I'm all in on fucking Honk. Wish I had a Honk t-shirt. He's like a hybrid of an anteater, Alf, and like a small Yeti. Mm-hmm. Like he looks like Alf basically, like with that schnoz.
It's funny. Like I feel like a snork, yeah. Like cultural footprint of it, like the impression that these shows have left is like huge. The influence is huge, but it's not like, like there was like a late 80s, early 90s Land of the Lost reboot, and then there was like the Will Ferrell movie in like the early 2000s. But I feel like, it's just like it's kind of few and far between. Like I would think there'd be like more.
I would have killed to see Will Ferrell in his prime in a Far Out Space Nuts movie.
Far Out Space Nuts is such a great combination, like that vaudevillian stuff, and like the writing is pretty funny too. And so
Honk if you love Honk.
Honk if you love Honk. Like
I want that.
I don't. You said you only saw the first episode.
Yeah.
Like episode 5. Here's the big thing. Like here's the thing that's going to be like they get their ship like out of gravity, like they're in orbit, they're in space. They hear like some kind of like boom or some kind of thing outside of the ship, and they're saying, "Oh, there's a boom." The guy's like, "Oh, there can't be anything out there. It's space. There's nothing out there in space, so you can't hear a boom." And then Bob Denver Jr., the Gilligan character, he says, "Oh, it's a good thing that there's no sound in space, because then nobody can hear you scream."
What?
And I was like,
you
wait,
gotta be fucking
this
kidding
is
me.
1975.
Predating
Aliens. And predating Alien. And I'm like, was in space nobody can hear you scream?
That was the tagline of
Alien. And I was like, is that just like sort of an old saying that predates all of this? And he like, I'm thinking Bob Denver. I'm thinking Sid and Marty Krofft invented this famous tagline for Alien.
That's like one of the greatest taglines.
Yeah, so
like with just like with Jaws 2, just when you were thought it was safe to go back in the water.
Right? Yeah. Is there going to be an episode of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters where they're like, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water? Like, but he said, like, my jaw dropped when I heard.
What's that? Maybe we hit an air pocket. There's no air in outer space. That's good. What's good? It's good there's no air in outer space because when you get very afraid and scream, nobody can hear you. I'm afraid.
It's like, and also this writing, like, because it's you know sort of corny joke kind of stuff. It's like, oh, that's bad writing, but that's actually like really good. Like the writing on these shows is really good. It's
you gotta be shitting me.
They're going for a different aesthetic, but yeah, it has the whole set. He's like. Well, yeah, in space, it's a good thing there's no sound in space because then nobody can hear you scream.
My jaw is on the floor.
So we'll have to play
shocking me here.
Yeah, so we're breaking news here. I was looking for some previous. I couldn't find a previous thing to Alien, except for Bob Denver.
Unreal.
Mm-hmm. So he was 40. So then I was kind of doing the math. So when he was Maynard G. Krebs on Dobie Gillis, Bob Denver was in his 20s. And then for like the first episode of Gilligan's Island, he was 30. So he was in his 30s through Gilligan, and then he's in his, he's 40 on Far Out Space Nuts. It was only one season. So many of these shows are only one season, and it's such a shame.
They land on Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. They kind of trimmed all the fat from Gilligan's Island because it's just Gilligan and the skipper and Honk and like nobody else. There's no
Bob Denver,
Thurston Howe or anything.
His character Junior runs into Gilligan and they like melt like Ron Silver in Time Cop.
Yeah, it's
horrifying.
Bob Denver and John Denver. They have the Denver family haircut.
Yeah, because he's like, something's spurring me to get this cut. I can feel it.
I said lunch, not launch. It's so economical. Like to get to the point where you can write like that, where you can write so economically.
That's so hilarious.
And yeah, Bob Denver, like it's like bad green screen. He's floating in front. He's floating, in free fall. All this stuff floating around, and then like an orange ends up in his mouth. And then Chuck McCann's putting on his space helmet, gets hit in the face with a pie somehow. In fast forward, it makes me laugh every time. Like, there's something about like the speed of it and just how the thing
fucking
smears
hilarious.
Across his face.
That werewolf though, I popped pretty hard.
No, it was not the werewolf from Heat,
Very
Vision, and Jack,
disappointing.
but I get the feeling that they were like
somebody saw that at some point.
Like maybe they made a sizzle reel. And that was part of it. And then when they shot their actual episode, they're like, okay, we can actually put someone in a werewolf.
We gotta have like in the werewolf insert.
Yeah, Total Recall werewolf
insert
completely. There's crystal people. Like it is like the sci-fi is legitimate. It's legitimate sci-fi. It's I'd say the sci-fi is a little more hard sci-fi in Land of the Lost, but Far Out Space Nuts is pretty close.